Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video, I will be dealing with the second topic of the chapter, a theoretical overview of artificial neural networks. The second topic is perceptrons, the first neural networks. So these are the different topics that will be covered in this video. We will be starting off with an introduction to the topic. We will then look at the perceptron model. We will look at the difference or the comparison between the perceptron and the Macaulay-Pitts model that we looked at in the previous video. Then we will see the XOR function. We will look at the perceptron structure in detail. And lastly, we will look at what exactly is a multi-layered perceptron. So the human visual system is one of the wonders of the world. Consider this following sequence of handwritten digits. So we have 504192. So most people effortlessly recognize these digits as 504192. That ease is deceptive. In each hemisphere of our brain, humans have a primary visual cortex known as V1, containing 140 million neurons with tens of billions of connections between them. And yet human vision involves not just V1, but an entire series of visual cortices, that is V2, V3, V4 and V5, doing progressively more complex image processing. We carry in our heads a supercomputer tuned by evolution over hundreds of millions of years and superbly adapted to understand the visual world. Recognizing handwritten digits is not easy. Rather, we humans are stupendously, astoundingly good at making sense of what our eyes show us. But nearly all that work is done unconsciously. And so we don't usually appreciate how tough a problem our visual systems can solve. The difficulty of visual pattern recognition becomes apparent if you try to attempt to write a computer program to recognize digits like these. What seems easy when we do it suddenly becomes extremely difficult. Simple intuitions about how we recognize shapes, say a 9 has a loop at the top and a vertical stroke at the bottom right, it turns out to be not so simple to express algorithmically. When you try to make such rules precise, you quickly get lost in a morass of exceptions and caveats and special cases. It seems hopeless. Neural networks approach the problem in a different way. The idea is to take a large number of handwritten digits known as training examples and then develop a system which can learn from these training examples. In other words, the neural network uses the examples to automatically infer rules for recognizing handwritten digits. Furthermore, by increasing the number of training examples, the network can learn more about handwriting, and so it can improve its accuracy. So while we've just showed just 100 training digits over here, perhaps we could build a better handwriting recognizer by using thousands or even millions of billions of training examples. Perceptron model. Frank Rosenblatt, an American psychologist, proposed the classical perceptron model in 1958. Further refined and carefully analyzed by Minsky and Papert in 1969, their model is referred to as the perceptron model. The perceptron model proposed by Minsky Papert is a more general computational model than Macaulay-Pitts neuron that we looked at in the previous video. It overcomes some of the limitations of the Macaulay-Pitts neuron by introducing the concept of numerical weights. Numerical weights are nothing but a measure of importance for inputs and a mechanism of learning those weights. So inputs are no longer limited to Boolean values like in the case of Macaulay-Pitts neuron. It supports real inputs as well, which makes it way more useful and generalized. Now, this is actually quite similar to the MP neuron, but we take a weighted sum of the inputs and set the output as 1 only when the sum is more than the arbitrary threshold, that is theta. So, y is equal to 1 if summation I is equal to 1 to n, wixi is greater than equal to theta. So, this is the weighted sum now. Before in the MP neuron, we only saw the summation of xi. But here we're adding weights. To each input, we're adding weights. That means we're adding some sort of importance to the input. Weights are nothing but measures of importance. So now we're taking the summation of the weighted inputs. And this summation, if it is greater than or equal to the thresholding parameter, that is theta, the neuron will fire. If it is lesser than the thresholding parameter theta, the neuron will not fire. You can write the same equation as y is equal to 1 if this summation minus theta, bring this theta to the other side, minus theta greater than equal to 0, and y is equal to 0 if this weighted sum minus theta, bring it over here, minus theta is less than 0. Now look at this. We have added x0 and w0. Here w0 is called the bias. Bias means it represents some sort of prior prejudice. Suppose I can explain this with the movie example that I took in the last video. So basically what happened was I wanted to make a decision as to whether I wanted to watch a movie on TV at home or not. So what were the various inputs that we considered? We considered one to be whether the movie was of comedy genre, and because I seem to like comedy. And the next input was whether it was the movie was of a regional language. I don't like regional language movies. Suppose I don't like any. No offense to any, of course. And then suppose the third input was whether I'm home or not. In fact, that seemed to be an inhibitory input, because if that was one, that would mean that I'm not at home and there was no way I could watch a movie on TV at home if I'm not at home. And then x4 was whether my favorite actor was part of the movie. So that was the example that we took. So when I'm talking about biases, we're talking about some sort of prior prejudice or some prior prejudice, meaning you already are biased towards a certain outcome, to put it in simple words. So suppose I have a very low threshold, meaning I can watch any sort of movie. I don't care if it's comedy, I don't care if it's regional languages, I don't care which actor acts in the movie, I don't care about anything like that. I'm open to all kinds of movies. Then that means my bias is very low. On the other hand, if I'm a very selective viewer, meaning my movie has to be of the comedy genre, or my whatever favorite actor, whoever my favorite actor is, that person has to be there in the movie. If I'm very selective like that, that means my bias is high. So the point is, the weights and bias will depend on the data. Okay, so more accepted convention. So since now that we've introduced x0 and w0, a more accepted convention of the same equation is y is equal to 1 if this summation of the weighted inputs is greater than equal to 0. Look at this summation, I is equal to 0 to n. Over here you wrote 1 to n. Now that we've introduced x0 and w0, we're writing I is equal to 0 to n, wixi greater than equal to 0, and 0 if this summation is less than 0, where x0 is equal to 1 and w0 is equal to minus theta. So w0 is equal to minus theta. Now let us look at the comparison between the perceptron and the Macaulay-Pitts model. What kind of functions can be implemented using a perceptron, and how different is it from the Macaulay-Pitts neuron? So from these equations, it is clear that even a perceptron separates the input space into two halves, positive and negative. All the inputs that produce an output will lie on one side, that is the positive half space, and all the inputs that produce an output 0 will lie on the other side, that is the negative half space. In other words, a single perceptron can only be used to implement linearly separable functions, just like the Macaulay-Pitts model. Then what is the difference between the two? Why do we claim that the perceptron is an updated version of the Macaulay-Pitts neuron? Here, the weights, including the threshold, can be learned and the inputs can be real values. Over here they were just Boolean, but here they can be real values and you have associated some sort of importance to each input. So that is sort of what makes the perceptron a more updated version of the Macaulay-Pitts model of the neuron. Now let us look at a non-linear Boolean function. That is, you cannot draw a line to separate the positive inputs from the negative ones. So, we are looking at the XOR function. From the XOR truth table, we have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1, 1. If you are familiar with the XOR gate, you'll know that for unlike inputs, meaning if it's 0, 1 or 1, 0, the output will be 1. And for like inputs, that is 0, 0 and 0, 1, 1, 1, the output will be 0. So in this case, can you think of drawing just one line? Anywhere, just drawing one line as a, as a distinction boundary or some sort of boundary that that distinguishes between two classes of outputs. It is not possible in this case. So this means that we cannot be using the perceptron as we saw earlier to implement the XOR function. Point is that there are no perceptron solutions for non-linearly separated data. So the key takeaway is a single perceptron cannot learn to separate the data that are non-linear in nature. Let us now look at the perceptron structure in detail. Okay, so we have the first layer, that is inputs, and we saw x0 was equal to 1, that is represented over here, and we have w0, w1, these are all the weights, and then you're taking a summation, and then you'll pass it through something called an activation function, which we will be looking at in the next video, and then you'll get the output. So input values, the perceptron takes real values as its inputs. For example, if the perceptron is tasked with classifying iris flowers, okay, it's an open deep learning data set if any of you are interested, into two inputs that could be of the length and the width of the flower petals. So your main objective is to classify the iris flowers, and two inputs that are giving to that neuron or neural network is the length and width of the flower petals. Now let us come to the weights and bias. This is very important to understand. The weights represent the relative importance of each of the weights or inputs, I think it's supposed to be inputs over here, to the classification decision. So the weights give some sort of importance to the inputs, and a bias weight is added and multiplied by a constant equal to 1. We already saw what bias was in that example. So this is what is explained over here. So we're done with inputs, we're done with weights. Coming to the weighted sum. The input values are multiplied by the weights and summed up to create one aggregate value which is fed into the activation function. The activation function generates a classification decision. For example, the iris is classified as either setosa or versicolor. So activation function will make a decision and will give the output. We will be looking at this in detail in the next video of the chapter. Now let us jump to the multi-layered perceptron. A multi-layered perceptron, or MLP, is a perceptron that teams up with additional perceptrons stacked in several layers to solve complex problems. The diagram here shows an MLP with 3 layers. Each perceptron in the first layer on the left, that is the input layer, sends outputs to all the perceptrons in the second layer, that is the hidden layer. and all the perceptrons in the second layer sends outputs to the final layer, that is the output layer. Each perceptron sends multiple signals, one signal going to each perceptron in the next layer. So each perceptron sends multiple signal, each signal goes to different perceptrons in the next layer. For each signal, the perceptron uses different weights. In the diagram here, every line going from a perceptron in one layer to the next layer represents a different output. Each layer can have a large number of perceptrons and there can be multiple layers. So the multi-layer perceptron can easily become and quickly become a very complex system. The multi-layer perceptron has another more common name, which is nothing but a neural network. A three-layer multi-layered perceptron like this diagram is called a non-deep or shallow neural network, but a multi-layer perceptron with 4 or more layers is called a deep neural network. One difference between multi-layered perceptron and a neural network is that in the classic perceptron, the decision function is a step function. That means we'll talk about that in the next video. And the output is binary. In neural networks, however, they are evolved versions of MLPs. We have other activation functions that can be used, which result in outputs of real values, usually between 0 and 1 or between -1 and 1. This allows for probability-based predictions or classification of items into multiple labels. So we will be looking at activation functions in the next video. I'll see you there. Until then, have fun with machine learning. Thank you for watching.